How far can you go? In this activity, your students will break into groups, skip rope while timing each other, record how far they traveled, create a graph with their data, use that graph to make predictions, and then test those predictions out. Before you start, it's a good idea to let your students know that this is not a competition. Remember, the idea is to skip rope, measure distance, record data, graph results, and predict. Or skip, measure, record, graph, and predict, not to race. Begin by gathering materials for this activity. You will need jump ropes, about 1 for every 3 of your students, pencils, measuring tape, 1 for every group of 3 will do, markers, rulers, a large piece of chart paper, graph paper, data collection sheet. To find this last item, visit explora.us/changing-the-equation and search for the How Far Can You Go activity. As a group, ask your students, can you think of examples in sports where the athletes are timed? Give time for your students to think and listen to their answers. This will get them primed to make good mental connections, so it's an important step. Introduce the activity to your students by telling them they will be skipping rope and trying to predict how far they will go in a given time. It's good to remind students here that this is not a competition. But ask the class if they think the distance a person goes while skipping rope may vary. Divide your students into small groups of 2 or 3. Go ahead and let them select their own rope. Explain that each member of the group will take a turn skipping rope while the others keep time and record distance jumped on the How Far Did You Go data collection sheet. Groups will measure the distance covered for 3 different times: 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and 1 minute. Give them about 20 minutes to complete this step. If you have time beforehand, it's a good idea to mark distance on the floor with tape at 1-foot intervals for students to use. Otherwise, students can use measuring tapes. With students still in their groups, distribute graph paper and explain that they will create a line graph to chart the data they collected. Help students label the axes. The horizontal axis, or the x-axis, should be labeled time, and the vertical axis, or the y-axis, should be labeled distance. Ask students what numbers they want to put on the x-axis. If they include every number from 1 to 60 seconds, then can they fit a whole minute on the graph? Would it be easier to count by multiples, like 3s or 5s? Let groups decide how they want to number their graphs. Draw a simple line graph like this one on a large piece of chart paper in front of the class. Ask how each point should be added to the graph and discuss as a group. Listen to their answers and give your students time to come up with ideas. You can demonstrate how to fill out their graphs by using 2 fingers. Draw your first finger along the x-axis until you hit the x-axis value. Then repeat this process for the y-axis. Move your fingers at the same time towards each other until they meet. This is where you'll mark your point. Have your students then fill out their graphs with their own data. Have rulers available for them to connect the dots. Ask groups to explain their graphs to the class. Ask questions like, does your line go upwards or downwards? What does that mean? Did you skip rope farther when given more time? Give your students time to understand and discuss their graphs. Have students look at their graphs again. Ask how far they think they would skip rope in another given time, like 25 seconds. Once everyone has a prediction based on their graph, then have the group skip rope for the new time and measure distance to test their predictions. You can ask questions like, was your prediction accurate? Can they predict how long it takes to skip rope a certain distance? How could they test this prediction?
Changing the equation. After-school math curriculum brought to you by Explora. Funding provided by Sandia National Laboratories. Find more Changing the Equation videos at explora.us/changing-the-equation.